Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'll be talking about the 538 model for the 2024 presidential election. I'll be doing some analysis on it. I'll be talking about what I like, what I don't like, and overall whether I think it is an accurate, well-built model. So yesterday, June 11th, they released their model, and I'm going to say it, I don't hate it. I think that this is 538's best model in a couple cycles. And for those of you who've been watching my channel, maybe since 2022 or even since 2020, you will know that I've been very critical of 538. And that's in part because in 2020, their model looked like this. They gave Joe Biden an 89% chance of winning, and I really wasn't a fan of it. I thought that they were way too bullish on Biden. I thought that, especially in the Rust Belt, they were severely overestimating his support. And if you look at their margins on election day, they had Biden, within a point in Ohio. He was supposed to be winning Michigan by, 8%. He was ahead in Wisconsin by even more. Pennsylvania was a bit better, but 5-point margin seemed a little much. And so I was critical of this model. And again, if you watched my channel back then, you will remember that I had Biden losing Ohio, losing Iowa, being only a narrow favorite in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So 538 and I clashed a lot in 2020, and in 2022 we did as well, except it was the other way. I thought Democrats were going to do better than 538 was predicting. So this is the first year where overall I agree with 80 to 90% of the stuff they're saying. And this is a model that I was really surprised by. I thought that they'd be very bullish on Trump because obviously, most of their models are based on the polls. And in 2020, when you saw this model, the reason that Biden was supposed, they were so confident Biden was going to win or gave him such a high chance of winning was because the polls were so good for him. So, for that reason, I was surprised that we didn't see a model that just reflected what the polls say, because right now the polls have Trump winning essentially every swing state, I think with the exception of maybe Wisconsin, but it depends on the day because it's so back and forth. But no, they gave Biden a 53% chance of winning, Trump a 47% chance of winning, and it's a very close race here. I mapped it out right here. Their final tally is 270 electoral votes for Biden, 268 for Trump. So literally one electoral vote. Like if Nebraska 2 goes red, we have a tied election. And that's obviously an outcome that I think no one wants. But yet they have a close race. They have Trump flipping back Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, but Biden holding on to the Rust Belt, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And so just a genuinely very, very close race here. And we'll talk about it. So if you look at the margins that they have across these states, first of all, they do show some movement towards Trump in terms of the median electoral vote outcome. Obviously, the average outcome they have is 276 votes for Biden, but if you go through it state by state, they give him 270, but this is just their median outcome. But if you go to win probability, which is much more indicative, Biden at 53 as of today, he was at 53, 52 all week, it looks like. And he started out, obviously this is before they released it, but he started out in April. He was doing a lot better, but Trump has improved a lot. Trump actually took the lead, it looks like, for a day last week. So this model shows a close race, but they do show movement towards Trump. Now, let's talk about the map here. So obviously, the normal suspects, California, Biden has a 99% chance there, or greater than 99% chance. Wyoming, Trump greater than 99% chance. Then you go to the lighter red states like Iowa, 84% for Trump. Virginia, 78% for Biden. And then we have the toss-up states. Nevada, 54% chance for Trump. Arizona, 52% chance for Trump. Wisconsin, 57% chance for Biden. Georgia, 57% chance for Trump. North Carolina, just in that range, 60% for Trump. Michigan, 59% for Biden. Then, of course, Pennsylvania, arguably the most important state, 57% for Joe Biden. So this is a pretty reasonable map. Obviously, I know if you watched my most recent election prediction video, I had Trump winning the Electoral College by a narrow margin. The states that we disagreed on were Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, so my map looked like this. Although I did have Biden winning. Actually, I had Biden winning Arizona, so the map looked like that, really. But, disagreeing on 3 states isn't the worst thing ever. And, again, to me, Wisconsin's a pure toss-up. Wouldn't be shocked if it voted for Biden. Same with Pennsylvania. So, this model, overall, I don't hate it. Now, does that mean that I think it was built, 100% foolproof? Do I think that it's consistent? No. That's my biggest problem with it. Now, building models is hard, and I actually am kind of in the minority. I'm in the camp or the kind of the side of people who think that models aren't the best way to predict elections. I don't think that there is a string of equations you can make, whether it's 50 pages long or 5 pages long, that give you the best chance of predicting an election. Now, I like to do election math. I have spreadsheets, and you'll see more of those as we get closer to election day. I like to track polls. I like to adjust for polling errors. I like to look at crosstabs. I'm not like anti-statistics or math when it comes to predicting elections. But I do think that you would be better off, taking that, but only using it as 60 to 70% of your analysis. And the remaining 30 to 40% should come off, fundamentals, turnout data that we're getting in the final weeks. And this model doesn't account for that. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and that's my thoughts on this. But regardless, let's talk about what they are showing. So again, the top lines aren't bad, and I think if you look at the swing states, yeah, I think it makes sense, right? Like their margins, Trump winning Arizona by 0.5 point, reasonable. Winning Nevada by 0.9, reasonable. Biden winning Michigan by 2, reasonable. Pennsylvania by 1.6, very reasonable. And then as you go down more and more, you start to see kind of more states and how competitive they expect these states to be. And I think all these margins, like in a vacuum, are very reasonable. Again, I think Ohio should be a bit redder. For example, I think Trump won it by like 10, not 7. But regardless, the margins themselves are good. And this is why broadly I think that this is their best model in a few years, because the margins make sense even in the redder states. Because in 2020, they thought Ohio was going to be within a point, and they thought Biden was going to win Michigan by 8. And those were margins that did not make a lot of sense. But this year, the margins are good. Now, here's my biggest problem with this model. My problem is that the percentages and the chances of victory across these states don't make any sense. So here's an example. Virginia. Virginia is a state that I expect Biden to win by a good amount. I think 7 or 8 points. That's what they have. They have winning it by, I think, 7. But they give him a 78% chance. So what does that mean? That means that if you flipped a coin 5 times, Trump would win a little more than 1 out of those 5 times. Now, the 22% chance doesn't seem like a lot, but this is one of my favorite ways to talk about it. If you were told that the airplane you're about to get on has a 22% chance of crashing or not, or having some sort of malfunction, you obviously wouldn't get on, because that 22% gets a lot scarier when it actually applies to your real life. Now, obviously, airplanes are safe, and 22% chance of your airplane going or undergoing some sort of disaster is not likely. But again, the 22% chance is a lot more significant than first meets the eye, so it's always important to contextualize it. And I don't think that if you ran this election 5 times, Trump would win 1 time in Virginia. I think Trump's chances are lower than 10% in Virginia. The state voted for Biden by 10% in 2020. It's left trending. And on top of that, Donald Trump is toxic in these suburbs that have, began to dominate the state's electorate. So I genuinely don't think that that 22% number is even close to being realistic. But it gets worse when you look at the other states, because if Trump has a 22% chance of winning Virginia, he's probably doing really well, right? Like if you genuinely think that Trump has a 1 in 5 chance of winning the state, he's doing well everywhere else. But if you go to Florida, which is a state where I think we all agree he's going to win by a lot, Biden has a 26% chance. So that means if you flipped a coin 4 times, Biden would have 1 out of 4 times. And that to me is even worse. I think that Florida and Virginia are similar levels of competitive in that they're not competitive, and that the margins will be similar. I think Trump will win like Florida by 7 or 8. I think Biden will win Virginia by 7, maybe 7.5. So they're similar. But in any election cycle, you would expect, like, if we are in an election that is Republican-leaning and Republicans are doing well nationwide, maybe Virginia, they have a 1 in 5 chance, but Florida, they have like a 95% chance. Or if we're in a blue wave environment, Virginia, 95% chance for Biden, Florida's like a 30 to 33% chance for Biden. So pick one or the other. That's what I'm saying. It isn't consistent to have both states being competitive, right? Like, you wouldn't have Ohio being competitive in the same year as Michigan being a toss-up, right? This year, Michigan's a toss-up, so I don't think Ohio's competitive. But if we were in a blue wave year where Ohio was a toss-up, I'd say Michigan is probably in the likely column for Democrats. So you have to understand that, and I think that this model doesn't really do a good job of accounting for that. And there's also just some, aside from that big problem, which I've kind of laid out here, that it's not consistent, there's some problems with just the margins and how states are voting relative to each other, right? Like, Florida, they give Biden a 26% chance there, but they only give him a 23% chance in Texas. I think Biden's odds in Texas are significantly better than his odds in Florida. Doesn't mean I think he'll win Texas, but I think that he's, 2 or 3 times more likely to win Texas than he is to win Florida. And then, to go over to a state where Biden is winning. Like New York, they have within 15 points, which I was very surprised by because, again, the polls do have it kind of close, but I think most people expect that to not be the case. So that's not great. And then, finally, when you look at the states in the middle of the country that are pretty red, they give Biden like a weirdly high chance of winning a lot of these states. Like Iowa 16%, Missouri 4%, Kansas 5%. I think these are all too high. I think Biden has like a 5 to 6% chance of winning Iowa, if that. And that might seem low, but just like think of how shocking it would be for Biden to win Iowa. I don't think that that's like a 3 out of 20 chance of happening, right? Like just if the election happened 20 times, I don't think Biden would win Iowa 3 out of them. I think he'd win it like once, if that. And then Missouri and Iowa, I think these should be like 1 or 2%, not 4 or 5%. And again, that might not seem like a big difference, but like 4 is exponentially bigger than 1 or 1.5. So you have to remember that. But regardless, that's those are my thoughts on this model. I think that they get the small things wrong, but I think that at the end of the day, the top lines and the overall like prediction, the main takeaway is right. So this is a good model. I think it's in part because they switched from Nate Silver to G. Elliott Morris. So, and I definitely don't hate Nate Silver. I think he's smart. He's a lot smarter than I am and smarter than I ever will be. And he's a lot better at math than I am. But I haven't seen recently an election model from him or even, a broad political take from him that I've liked. Whereas G. Elliott Morris, I think, is a better model builder. And I think he was a little better in 2020 with The Economist. So, FiveThirtyEight, I think this is genuinely their best model in a few years. And again, I like the big picture stuff. And this map could happen. It's a close race. It's a race where anyone can win. A lot of these states, I think Wisconsin, Georgia, Pennsylvania, with Michigan, they're especially close right now. I think Nevada and Georgia could narrow up before Election Day. So we're in for a really close race right now. And I think that overall, this map is definitely reasonable, and I think it's the most reasonable map FiveThirtyEight has produced in a couple of cycles. So, again, let me know what you think. Let me know if you're surprised by this outcome, if you think Biden is favored right now, and, of course, subscribe if you have not already. So, with that, I'll see you all on the next one. And as always, I'm open to taking suggestions, so please do comment those down.